Men or women, you may well ask, perversion or the natural role? This programme is in praise of womanhood and femininity, and will bring to your attention something that is happening in our society today which is more menacing and damaging to that society and to the happiness and natural fulfilment of men and women than either communism or fascism. But while we would soon notice any sudden change to either of these ideologies, we have been and are being slowly indoctrinated with the help of legislation and relentless propaganda to the acceptance of this other thing. I refer to the doctrine of those people who want to destroy the natural sex roles, who want to destroy the family, which is the basis of society, and therefore to destroy the happiness and fulfilment which these things provide. These people, both men and women, who often go under this misleading title of women's liberation, but who in fact want to liberate women from being women and to enslave them into masculine roles, are totally obsessed with the fallacy of sexual equality and uniformity. They want to change human society into a unisex organization where men and women are interchangeable. They hope to achieve this by legislation and by propaganda in education and in the mass media. Propaganda which, as with political propaganda in the Soviet Union, now goes almost unnoticed. One American women's libber proudly proclaimed recently that in the United States women now work in the coal mines and many men are now in feminine roles. But it is time that we in Britain stop this perversion, and in this programme we hope to help to do this and to defend the value and legitimacy of femininity and the feminine woman, which are the main targets of the equality obsessed. I must stress the fact that our views are in no way party political. Furthermore, we are not against equal pay for equal work.
Laws are made and much propaganda is given to support the so-called women's lib movement, and every effort is made to push girls and women into masculine-type jobs and roles. But seldom is any praise, encouragement or support given to femininity or to the feminine role of wife and mother, both of which the majority of girls and women experience and want, but by the very nature of their femininity, they are a silent majority. Indeed, femininity and the feminine roles are generally ignored or denigrated, although they are as important as the male roles. Men and women are equally important but different, and these differences are the source of most human love and happiness, the most important things in life. But first, what are the sex differences which the equality-obsessed want to ignore? A doctor explains.
Men and women are different in size, bone structure and appearance. A man is much more muscular and much stronger than a woman. He can carry about 3 times as much. The voice, skin and metabolism are different too. Women are less aggressive than men, and men usually have a stronger sex drive. Women are more ruled by their emotions than men. There are very considerable psychological and emotional differences between men and women. Masculinity and femininity are not the result of artificial stereotyping by society, but are the result of genetic and glandular differences. Of the billions of cells that make up every human body, every one of those in the female body is different to those in the male body in a very special way. The nucleus of every male cell carries a Y chromosome, which is absent in the female. Although the male has a larger brain, this does not automatically give greater intellectual power, but it does seem to produce a different kind of drive. Finally, most experts believe that for a woman maternity is her natural creative fulfillment.
Anatomically and psychologically, the sexes are specifically designed for their respective roles. The female role is essentially a submissive one, and the male role is essentially assertive and aggressive. This relationship is an essential part of the nature of the love-making act and is reflected in many spheres of activity. The sexes are complementary, and the fact that the man is naturally the dominant partner does not make the other an inferior human being, as women's lib would have it. It is a deep human relationship enjoyed by both. Furthermore, there is no contradiction between femininity and intelligence, nor necessarily between femininity and a career.
The feminine woman, and by that I mean a proper woman, has no wish to be manly, and she finds happiness and fulfilment through her femininity and natural female role, which the equality-obsessed fail to comprehend. She wants to be a wife to a dominant, responsible man, and she sees the enormous value of the vocation of being a wife and of creating, rearing and educating a family in the freedom of the modern home, where she can excel and develop various inside and outside the home activities and interests. She has the possibility of a more varied and interesting existence than many men. In contrast, the tied hours and often boring routine of factory, shop or office seems hardly liberating or desirable. Like me, I believe that the majority of young women see the role of wife and mother as being woman's main purpose in life, and the one that will bring her the greatest happiness and satisfaction.
However, extensive propaganda is being put over today not only by the mass media but in our schools to destroy the natural sex roles. But first we return to another aspect of the differences in the sexes. That is, in the matter of performance in both work and play. In sports such as football, rugby, hockey, cricket, tennis and many other ball games, women cannot give the same performance as men. And why should anyone want them to? In some sports, especially in such things as wrestling, women make disgusting fools of themselves, and it is a reflection of a sick society that women should want to and be encouraged to take part in such activities. Yet governments and people in position of influence do everything possible to encourage and give praise and publicity to these man-aping women, who do nothing but pervert the word woman, which should symbolize grace, beauty and femininity, not masculine toughness and brawn. Look at this East German javelin thrower. No, it is not a man, it is a woman, although it may be difficult to believe. But what is equally surprising is that the man writing the article which went with this picture said nothing but praise for these muscular, man-like women.
What sort of a man is it that likes such creatures? Is this really the sort of thing that men and women want women to become? In some activities, women are better than men. Look at the grace, beauty and brilliant performance of girl gymnasts such as Olga Korbut.
To say that women can do the same as men is totally untrue and denies the natural sex differences. It is only because we do operate sex discrimination in sports and athletics that women can ever win. If the best women's hockey team had to play the best men's team, they would always lose. Likewise, the best woman tennis player would never beat the best man player, and the fastest female runner would never beat even a moderate male runner. Sex discrimination is not the dirty word that it is made out to be. It simply recognises the sex differences, which the equality-obsessed want to ignore. In work and occupations, men and women also give different performances and show different aptitudes and abilities. This is not just due to the fact that men are much stronger than women, but because there are mental and intellectual differences.
In the police force, women have always served a useful role, but to pretend that policewomen can do the same as the men is sheer nonsense. Yet this is what the absurd Sex Discrimination Act now requires. The average young policewoman cannot possibly cope with the male drunk, the violent male criminal, or help to push back a furious crowd of demonstrators. In meeting such situations, she would have to rely on the protection of the male police. Our equality-obsessed MPs are not only giving young women a totally wrong image of themselves, but are putting them at risk and wasting public money. The Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset rightly complained earlier this year of the unisex laws which require him to put women, as well as men, onto outside night patrol duty. But whereas a man can go on his own, the Chief Constable says he dare not send a policewoman on her own, so he is forced to send a man out with the woman for her protection. Can one imagine a more absurd and wasteful situation? But these are the rules of our equality-obsessed legislators.
Furthermore, although policewomen cannot give the same performance as men, they are nevertheless given equal pay. It is a sign of the success of unisex propaganda that the men do not object to this unfair situation. It is not surprising that equal pay for unequal work is attracting more women than men into the police force. There are other occupations where women cannot give the same performance as men, such as the armed services, in engineering, in the fire service, and in other occupations where strength and stamina are required. And because of the different psychological makeup of the sexes and their different aptitudes, women do not generally do so well in executive positions and in occupations involving danger, problem-solving, numerical tasks, and analytical thinking. The Y chromosome in the male cells induces greater genetic variety and extremes, and it is consequently the male which produces the supreme achievements in art, science, philosophy, and music, as well as more of the intellectually abnormal and subnormal. It is the men who produce the Beethovens, Einsteins, Churchills, and the Hitlers. Women are less belligerent, generally more virtuous and compassionate. They are more average than men. They are better at verbal skills and with their fingers. They really are better at needlework, typing, and languages. They are better at rote memory and, above all, with all forms of nurturing. The latter accounts for their outstanding ability to deal with young children and the way in which they excel in nursing.
Indeed, in the nursing profession, women give a performance of devotion, sympathy, tenderness, as well as the feminine touch, which is beyond praise and which no man could give.
A woman, if she has wanted to, has always been able to make a career for herself outside the home, but for the vast majority of women, her vocation of wife and mother is her most important function in life, and the one in which she naturally excels. Men and women are physically, psychologically, and emotionally very different, and consequently give different performances and have different aptitudes and attitudes. This is proved by ordinary daily experience and by doctors, psychiatrists, researchers, and writers far too numerous to mention. However, in spite of these indisputable facts, the women's libbers want to coerce us into believing that there are no significant differences between the sexes. This monstrous contention is also backed up by government legislation.
The Sex Discrimination Act and the so-called Equal Opportunities Commission have created situations that would be nothing but laughable if their purpose was not so sinister. It sounds funny to read an advertisement for a cow person when the correct English word is cowman, until one considers what is really behind it all. It denies the existence of the sexes, the greatest division in the animal kingdom. It denies choice and freedom. Above all, such adverts form just a very small part of a vast scheme to change society into a unisex organisation, and is at present geared to enticing girls and women into every conceivable type of work, except, of course, work of a feminine nature, where they would prefer to entice men. Here are some of these advertisements. The proper English word herdsman, perverted to herdsperson. Advertisements for bar persons, warehouse person, motor stores person, patrol fire person, and contract salesperson. No longer are we allowed to have chambermaids in our hotels, only chamber persons. I wonder what a pig man-woman looks like, or a fully experienced parts person. In America, things have gone even further. Manhole covers have now become personhole covers. Although foreign firms can advertise for the sex required, the Britisher is denied this basic freedom. A disco in Gloucester is no longer allowed to say that on Fridays and Saturdays girls are admitted free. Instead, they now have to say anyone wearing a skirt admitted free. This is great news for all male perverts, who, if they turn up in skirts, can get in free. But of course, a real live girl in jeans will have to pay. Needless to say, government departments fall wholeheartedly in line with the unisex policy. Even passport application forms now ask if you are Mr., Mrs., Miss, or MS. Why not also add an M for those who don't know or don't want others to know what sex they are. On passports too, no longer does a man have his wife included, but a person can have its spouse included. One wonders what sort of weedy man it is that wants his wife to take him abroad rather than him taking her. The Equal Opportunities Commission must be very pleased. Not only are they getting the expected full backing of the trade unions, led by a militant women's lib-type few, but people who do not even have to comply with the Sex Discrimination Act are nevertheless doing so. The indoctrination has worked. Most armed services adverts purposely avoid the use of that nasty word men, and small employers with less than 6 employees, who are also exempt, are nevertheless complying with the unisex law. Why so? They are still free to advertise for a cowman, salesman or barmaid. Such bodies as the Worcester Health District, however, are denied this freedom. They are not allowed to advertise for a female nursery nurse for the care of babies in the maternity unit, although this is a woman's job. The sex of the applicant, the most important factor, must be totally ignored. In fact, of course, the unisex laws are frequently broken. A garage owner will not employ a woman mechanic, as she could not undertake the heavy duties required.
The sensible big company will not ignore that for leadership and top management, a male is more suitable. In professional, clerical and other work, a woman seldom gives quite the same value to her employer. She is likely to be affected by her monthly periods, and she is likely to leave, sometimes after expensive training, to become a wife and mother. This is understandable and praiseworthy, but to ignore these facts is economic madness. With modern technology, which makes higher wages possible, there never was a time when it should be less necessary for a married woman to go outside the home to work. However, the women's libbers are obsessed with the word work and are determined to push married women into the so-called workforce. This is partly achieved by reducing work hours, and therefore the man's pay potential, and by letting married women rather than unemployed men fill some vacant jobs.
But of course, taxation and propaganda are the 2 strongest methods of forcing married women into outside work, and thereby helping to achieve the women's lib aim of destroying the natural sex roles. Already in Parliament there are demands for an end to the married man's tax relief allowance. Women's lib propaganda is now so extensive and subtle that it is difficult to know where to begin. But of course it is to be found mostly in television and in the press. We are getting so used to it that much goes unnoticed. Whatever newspaper or magazine one picks up today, one will almost certainly find an article about some women's lib grievance, viewpoint or demand. Reports and pictures of girls or women taking on masculine jobs, roles or sports are always given prominence of place and praise. Furthermore, for every article promoting femininity and the feminine role, you will find 10 promoting the women's lib line.
Some trade union papers, such as Nalgo's Public Service, are perhaps the worst of all. They are full of women's lib propaganda, news and venom, although this doesn't reflect the views of most of its members. So much was the Nalgo women's libbers' hatred for femininity and beauty that they permanently stopped the publication of the Prettiest Recruit of the Month feature in their magazine. That the girls liked going in for the competition was of no account. In women's lib jargon, the girls were being sex objects. That it is natural for the sexes to please each other, and that feminine beauty is a quality admired by both men and women throughout the ages, is of no consequence. Ugliness and perversion may be published, it would seem, but not beauty. The beautiful female is to be discredited.
Having 2 teenage daughters, I find especially objectionable, as they also do, the women's lib-type indoctrination that even appears in the teenage magazines. Liberate those teenage girls from being boy fodder was a typical recent title to one article, the contents of which can be guessed.
In television, the women's lib line comes over strongly. In educational talks to children and parents, the child's sex is usually ignored, and never is it mentioned that a girl's natural vocation is that of wife and mother. There are women's programmes where everything but feminine role matters are discussed, and others to encourage women to work outside the home. The last of the recent series, A Woman's Place, was a typical high-powered women's lib propaganda programme. It denigrated femininity and the feminine role. It objected to feminine beauty, and even to this advertisement, because it shows an attractive, happy girl pleasing a man. Most TV plays and films show women, if not in violent roles, then in masculine or domineering bossy roles, or pushing for some women's lib aim. Seldom does a modern play or film show women in feminine roles, and seldom is there a programme promoting femininity and the role of wife and mother in the home. In education, the equality obsession is put over in every possible way. The National Union of Teachers want all school textbooks altered so as to remove all references to the different and natural sex roles, and of course the Equal Opportunities Commission supports them. Pictures in young children's books showing father digging the garden and mother doing the vacuum cleaning have been removed. Children are being indoctrinated into unisex perversion. It is no different in character and probably more fundamentally harmful than the political indoctrination in schools in the Soviet Union. We have yet to start burning the books, as the Nazis did.
It is wrong that boys should be forced to have cooking and domestic science instruction like girls, and that girls should be forced to do carpentry and engineering like boys. Girls are also being encouraged into doing violent things like judo. Career guidebooks for school leavers totally ignore the existence of two sexes, and not a word is said about the important career of wife and mother in the home.
Indeed, the Advisory Council for Technical Education wants a major campaign to push girls into male-preserved jobs. Why? On the other hand, although there is a shortage of nurses, they say nothing of encouraging girls into this profession where they excel. They also want to encourage boys to become midwives and models. The conditioning of children into believing that the different sex roles are invalid is totally wrong. The sex differences are very real, and it is no coincidence, for example, that in single-sex schools boys fight but girls do not. The sex differences should be encouraged and enhanced, not suppressed. Unisex does not lead to happiness or fulfilment, but to confusion and unnatural behaviour. The increase in female violence in mixed schools and outside is a direct result of the equality indoctrination and the encouragement of girls to act like boys. The women's libbers are obsessed with the erroneous notion that every human activity must be done by both men and women, and that their rights, duties and requirements are the same. They are determined to push women into positions of power and into all male-orientated positions. They have complete contempt of the beautiful quality of femininity and all feminine values. They neuter words and demand such things as maternity beds for men and law-enforced wages for wives. Their concept of marriage is grotesque. They bring nothing but politics, conflict and bitterness between the sexes.
Don't they know that men and women are inherently different and have different priorities? Unlike men, women do not have to make paid employment the central issue in life. It is regrettable that some should want them to. A woman's status does not depend on profession or power, as does a man's. It is insulting to women to devalue femininity and their important natural role, and to imply that they are nothing unless they ape men.
Nevertheless, trade unions and others demand subsidised nurseries for young children to entice more women into industry and office. The important mother-child relationship must take second place to the gods' equality and output. The latest call is for a women's right to kill. High-ranking women officers in NATO complain that women are not yet allowed to be combat troops. If regrettably fighting has to be done, then it is the male who is physically and psychologically adapted for this task. One wonders what perversity makes women want to do this, and men to encourage them in it. Power and violence are alien to femininity. We have asked women why they think some women are women's libbers. Replies were inferiority complex, inability to be feminine or to attract men, insecurity, perversion, bad fathers or husbands, indoctrination, and political extremism. As to why men should take the women's lib line, the replies were, those in Parliament do it for vote-catching reasons, thinking, wrongly as it happens, that most women support women's lib. Others do it for the trendy belief that equality and justice are the same, and for ignorance of the value of the feminine role. Other women said they must be psychologically impotent men, certainly not proper men.
The women's lib's basic objection is to the concept of the dominant male and the submissive female and all that goes with it. But it is a natural situation which proper men and women like, and in consequence of the sex differences, it really is fundamentally unnatural relationship to put women over men. It is against the natural order of things. As a feminine and professional woman, I am very conscious of this fact. It is more natural and things work better when my assistants are women. Some people seem to regard marriage as a business partnership, but it is not. It is a relationship of love, and in the successful fulfilment of the different sex roles, happiness is found. As the wife of the Bishop of Bradford says, the word equality is totally meaningless in the concept of love, which totally transcends it. The Bible is very definite about the duties of husbands and wives. St. Paul says, "Wives, submit yourselves unto your husbands, as unto the Lord." In the unrevised church marriage ceremony, while both bride and groom promise to love each other, the bride also promises to obey. Unfortunately, these teachings are often ignored.
I want to obey and be owned by the man I love. Men should insist on their natural dominant role, but also be protective and chivalrous.
Fortunately, too, most young women see the role of wife and her femininity as being the criterion of the successful woman. She wants to please a dominant man she loves. She wants to bear his children and to create a happy home. This only a woman can do, and it is a supreme achievement. She will not be fooled by the women's lib cry of chattel.
A wife's role is of incalculable value, not only to her husband's success, but to her own, and to society as well. But the man is rightly the head of both, the woman and family, and should be their protector and provider. The male-female polarities are an essential part of the individual's ego, and the basis of love and happiness. Furthermore, love and romance are what makes human beings human. Male and female still experience the romantic situation. In Les Bicyclettes de Belsailles, we see the happiness and beauty of pure romance.
The beautiful human quality of femininity has a gentleness, purity, softness and sympathy which masculinity lacks.
Masculine dominance and feminine submissiveness are natural and the key to happiness.
Animals only copulate, but in humans it is the intensification and development of the psychological and intellectual differences between men and women which has created the sophisticated emotions of beauty, love and romance and put man so far above all other life on earth. The intensified sex differences have been and are the driving force and inspiration of every human endeavour and achievement. However, although the differences are vital to humanity, our legislators and many people in positions of influence want to destroy them. They positively encourage effeminate men and masculine women in their obsession for equality and unisex. They insult women's natural role. To them, a housewife is a nobody. The silent majority view is seldom stated, so we ask you to resist the women's libbers, to see that your children are not indoctrinated and perverted by them, and to support femininity and the feminine woman. But it is time that we in Britain stop this perversion, and in this programme we hope to help to do this and to defend the value and legitimacy of femininity and the feminine woman, which are the main targets of the equality obsessed. I must stress the fact that our views are in no way party political. Furthermore, we are not against equal pay for equal work.
Laws are made and much propaganda is given to support the so-called women's lib movement, and every effort is made to push girls and women into masculine-type jobs and roles. But seldom is any praise, encouragement or support given to femininity or to the feminine role of wife and mother, both of which the majority of girls and women experience and want, but by the very nature of their femininity, they are a silent majority. Indeed, femininity and the feminine roles are generally ignored or denigrated.
Of genetic and glandular differences. Of the billions of cells that make up every human body, every one of those in the female body is different to those in the male body in a very special way. The nucleus of every male cell carries a Y chromosome, which is absent in the female. Although the male has a larger brain, this does not automatically give greater intellectual power, but it does seem to produce a different kind of drive. Finally, most experts believe that for a woman maternity is her natural creative fulfillment.
Anatomically and psychologically, the sexes are specifically designed for their respective roles. The female role is essentially a submissive one, and the male role is essentially assertive and aggressive. This relationship is an essential part of the nature of the love-making act and is reflected in many spheres of activity, although they are as important as the male roles. Men and women are equally important but different, and these differences are the source of most human love and happiness, the most important things in life. But first, what are the sex differences which the equality-obsessed want to ignore? A doctor explains.
Men and women are different in size, bone structure and appearance. A man is much more muscular and much stronger than a woman. He can carry about 3 times as much. The voice, skin and metabolism are different too. Women are less aggressive than men, and men usually have a stronger sex drive. Women are more ruled by their emotions than men. There are very considerable psychological and emotional differences between men and women. Masculinity and femininity are not the result of artificial stereotyping by society, but are the results.
Who want to destroy the family, which is the basis of society, and therefore to destroy the happiness and fulfillment which these things provide. These people, both men and women, who often go under this misleading title of women's liberation, but who in fact want to liberate women from being women and to enslave them into masculine roles, are totally obsessed with the fallacy of sexual equality and uniformity. They want to change human society into a unisex organization where men and women are interchangeable. They hope to achieve this by legislation and by propaganda in education and in the mass media. Propaganda which, as with political propaganda in the Soviet Union, now goes almost unnoticed. One American women's libber proudly proclaimed recently that in the United States women now work in the coal mines and many men are now in feminine roles. Men or women? You may well ask, perversion or the natural role? This program is in praise of womanhood and femininity and will bring to your attention something that is happening in our society today which is more menacing and damaging to that society and to the happiness and natural fulfillment of men and women than either communism or fascism. But while we would soon notice any sudden change to either of these ideologies, we have been and are being slowly indoctrinated with the help of legislation and relentless propaganda to the acceptance of this other thing. I refer to the doctrine of those people who want to destroy the natural sex role.